Hello and welcome to another episode of Counseling Skills Practice. My name is Brittany Proctor. I am the licensed professional counselor and chemical dependency counselor here at the BC Counseling Center. Today we are going to be talking about worry with specific different types of therapeutic or counseling skills that can be really helpful to manage worry. Worry is one of those issues that is super common, which we'll get into some statistics here in a minute of exactly how common. But worry is a common issue that presents at the counseling center, and people are requesting help with how can I manage my worry and worry-based thoughts a little bit more productively. So first, let's take a step and define what worry is. So worry is typically looks like those repetitive what if thought patterns, right? It's kind of like the state of uncertainty over actual or potential problems. It's usually future focused, and usually worry occurs in conjunction with anxiety. Now, that's not to say because you worry, you have anxiety or a clinical mental health disorder. It just means that usually worry is a major component of anxiety. So, first of all, I want to start this off by saying that worry is an absolutely normal human response, right? Worry can sometimes be really motivating. There's not, there might be a few people, but most people on this planet experience worry at some point in their life. And a lot of times, worry can be based on what we're going through at any particular moment. So, for example, if I'm in a highly stressful moment of my life or I have a lot of things going on, sometimes worry can get a little bit more frequent versus times where everything's kind of going well in my life. I might not be worrying very much because there's not a ton to worry about. But then in that same breath, there are some people who worry continuously all the time, 24/7, even when there's nothing that you can say, okay, I should be worried about this thing. Sometimes we still worry anyway. But I will say a certain degree of worry is normal for most people, but it's when worry becomes chronic or overwhelming that it starts to, interfere with sleep, performance, my relationships, or my physical health. That's when worry becomes a problem for me as a mental health professional, is when worry keeps me from living my life or paralyzes me where I can't do anything. And like I said a minute ago, there are times that worry can be motivating and appropriate. For example, if your house is in foreclosure, I would say it's pretty reasonable to worry about something like that. Worry about where you're going to live, what you're going to do. So, according to the American College Health Association, in spring 2023, they did a study and found that 57% of college students report feeling overwhelming anxiety within the last year, and 26% report that anxiety interferes with their academic performance. So, this to say that worry isn't a common human experience, but it's also really common in students specifically. So, chronic worry, where I can't control it and it happens no matter what, can lead to overactivation of the amygdala, which for those of us that haven't taken psych yet, or maybe we didn't remember the concepts, but the amygdala is the fear center of our brain. So this is working in overdrive, right? Because we're always worried and we're always fearful. Leads to increased cortisol, which is our stress hormone, which there's been a ton of studies in pop culture right now of the impact that cortisol and stress can have on our physical body on top of our mental health. And a lot of times worry can lead to disrupted sleep or impaired immune responses, which can make us easier to get sick. So worry not only has an impact on our mental health, but also our physical health. So when we talk about coping with anxiety, which I know I'm getting to it, don't worry, which is why we're all here, is what do I do, Brittany? How can I help? How can I manage my worry when this does come up? Well, first of all, one helpful strategy can be to distinguish within yourself between productive and unproductive worry. Because like we said earlier, worry can be productive. It can be helpful. It can be motivating. Productive worry typically motivates planning, preparing for things. A great example can be, I'm worried that I might fail this class. Okay, well, let's sit down and look at that. What is causing this worry? Is it that you feel like you're not studying adequately? Does it feel like you're not retaining information? With something like this, we can create an action plan, right? And we can kind of move through, okay, well, let's go to success coaching. Let's go to the tutoring center. Let's talk with our professor. Let's problem solve this issue. Versus unproductive worry is typically a cycle. Usually the thoughts are intrusive, meaning that even when I try to not think them, they still pop up all the time. So it's like I'm always thinking about this worry. And usually unproductive worry, the key thing here is that it always focuses on things that we absolutely cannot control. Like, for example, death, right? We all know that at some point our lives will end. That's just part of being a human. We're all going to die one day. But most of the time, we don't think about this every second of every day unless it's brought to our attention. So, a lot of times we can't control death. Yes, we can take small steps to say, I'm going to do healthy things. I'm going to live a healthy life. I'm going to avoid high risk things. I'm not going to jump out of planes and skydive. So hopefully I won't ever be put in a situation where I will, die unexpectedly. But ultimately, that is outside of our control in that it is inevitable. So worrying about the fact that I'm going to die one day, every second of every day, I would label that as an unproductive worry. Same thing like worrying about what other people think about me, for example. To a certain degree, I can control that, but ultimately, I can't control other people and I can't control what they think. So this is the first step. One tip is kind of distinguishing with yourself. Okay, what is my worry itself? Is it productive? Is it unproductive? So I do have something else I can share. Usually I try not to share my screen and things like this because this is supposed to be an audio-based recording. But if we look at this worry tree, and if you can't see this, if you just Google worry tree counseling, you can see something similar. So the concept is I can ask myself, okay, first of all, I'm going to notice the worry and I'm going to ask myself what it is that I'm worrying about. Once I identify what the worry is about, I can ask myself, okay, is this a hypothetical situation? Am I asking myself, am I worrying and saying, what if I die tomorrow? What if I, fail my class? What if it's a hypothetical? It's not reality. Then we would let the worry go and refocus our attention on something productive. Versus if it's a current problem that I can actually do something about. Like, for example, worrying about the fact that I haven't paid on my student loans. I have the money to be able to do it. I'm just worried that I might forget this month. That's a problem that I can act on. So I'm going to develop an action plan, and I'm either going to do it right now to alleviate the worry, or I'm going to schedule a specific time that I'm going to handle that task so that I can stop worrying. So another great tip for managing anxiety can be to distinguish why it is that you care about this specific thing. So I'll give you a prime example, right? Easy example is babies. Most of us have experienced a baby in our lifetime, and I'm talking like infant here. So think about an infant crying. That causes a lot of stress, right? And infants causes a lot of worry too, typically. So why do you care if your baby is crying? Well, because I want it to stop crying. No, dig deeper. Like, why do you actually care if a baby is crying? Well, you could say, well, it's because I want them to feel loved and I want them to know that I'm here for them. Okay, dig deeper than that though. Why do you want the baby to feel loved? And ultimately, if we keep digging here, we find the real reason why we care at our core, which is that, I love them and I want to take care of them and I want them to feel love, right? This is a positive, motivating thing that is creating a worry. So sometimes if we dig deep enough in the things we worry about, we can find why we even care. And that care is always a positive value that we hold for ourselves. Now, once we identify this positive value, then we can act based off of that. So then developing an action plan, right? And saying, okay, so we're worried, we're overwhelmed, we're anxious about our baby. So let's refocus. How can we show our baby that we love them right now? So a lot of times we can shift our attention to what matters. Another great example is worrying about passing a class because I'm worried that if I don't pass my classes and get my degree, then I'm not going to get the job I want. So, okay, my question to you would be, why do you care about this job? Why do you want this job? And we dig, and we find eventually, okay, maybe it's because it brings me great value and purpose to do this thing that I want to do. Let's use counseling as an example. I really want to be a counselor because I want to help people. Okay, awesome. So let's look at the class itself and ask ourselves, okay, so how can I integrate that into the classwork that I'm doing? Is there a way I can focus on parts of the coursework that directly apply to how can I use this knowledge later to help people? And sometimes that can give us a fresh perspective and it distracts our brain from worrying to focus on something else. It's also important to emphasize, like I said earlier, once again, worry is absolutely common. This happens to everyone. Sometimes worry gets to the point, like we said, where we can't manage it. Now, these are just some simple strategies that are quick to implement, easy to understand, and vague, right? if you go through this and you find yourself, okay, Brittany, I've tried these things and I'm still worrying and it's still sucking a huge part of my life away, then my challenge to you would be maybe it might be time to consider maybe coming in to have a conversation with a professional to get some personalized, individualized strategies that might work better for you. And this is something we do in counseling all the time. Someone will present with a specific problem like worry, and sometimes what's most helpful for them to use their therapy time to come up with specific interventions and coping skills for their specific situation. And it's helpful because you can kind of go back and forth with a professional and, say, okay, Brittany, I tried that skill this week and it only helped me like 50%. I'm still worrying 50%. Is there something more that I can do? And we can kind of bounce back and forth and weed through skills and kind of find one that works for you, because every brain is completely different. What works for one person isn't going to work for the next person, and that's normal and that's okay. So that's part of our job too, is to know all of these different skills, have a working knowledge of all of them to be able to teach them to people to help them out. So help seeking, totally normal. I would encourage you, please stop by, schedule an appointment, have a conversation with us. And remember, this week, my challenge to you would be write down one worry that you have that comes up for you a lot. And also sit down and reflect and come up with some concrete steps that you can take to face this specific worry, to face this specific fear or concern that we have, and kind of see where that takes you. So yeah, like I said, feel free to stop by, shoot me an email, walk into the counseling center, give us a call, or even go to our website, check things out, and you can even schedule from there. This has been Brittany Proctor. Thank you so much for listening.